Titans. Epic battle. Cage fight. Thrones.
We're still talking about TVs, right? Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and lest you think I was making fun of anyone other than myself with that intro, let me assure you that the crosshairs of that satirical cannon were aimed squarely at yours truly. Look, in this day and age of clickbait headlines and outrageous thumbnails, it's hard not to play up a competition between two of the best TVs you can buy this year. But as I sat down to record this review, I couldn't do it. But I mean, it is pretty exciting, right? The LG G4 OLED TV is the best TV LG has ever made. And while I know there are some of you out there who have feelings about the Samsung S95D, it is, in my humble opinion, the best TV Samsung has made in 2024. That being the case, I know a lot of folks want to know which one they should buy. Is one categorically better than the other? Which one would I personally spend my money on? I'm gonna answer those questions in this versus video. And before I get into it, I wanna have a quick word with my Knit Nerd family. To all you enthusiasts out there, if you've seen the reviews I've done for both of these TVs and you already know a whole lot about them, you'd probably like to skip to picture quality battle and takeaway sections toward the end. And that's totally fine. There are time codes down in the description. However, I need to make this video for as large an audience as I can, which means for everyone else out there, if you've heard that these are the best OLED TVs you can buy and you're wondering which one might be best for you, but you don't really want to spend hours watching a bunch of review videos to figure it out, that's what this video is for. Soup to nuts comparison of these two awesome TVs, leading to some takeaways I hope will help you make an informed decision. Okay, enough banter, let's get into it. The LG G4 OLED TV is my favorite LG TV ever made. Now, in years past, if you bought the G or Gallery series from LG, that meant that you got a zero gap wall mount in the box with the TV, no stand. And if you wanted to put it on a credenza or media console like the BDI console we have here, you'd either have to buy an aftermarket third-party stand or get a stand made by LG, none of which I have liked very much. But this year is different. If you buy the 55 or 65 inch LG G4, you get a stand included in the box. If you buy a 77 inch or above model, you get the super slick gapless wall mount in the box, which means that if what comes in the box is not what you want, you need to plan to spend a few extra bucks to buy what you need. I am pleased to say though that the central pedestal stand LG includes with the 55 and 65 inch models here is excellent. It feels very solid and of excellent quality. Now, if you wall mount the TV flush against the wall as the wall mount allows, you'll note that the G4's inputs would be tough to access. Fortunately, LG's mount allows you to pull the TV away from the wall so you can plug and unplug cables at will, then slide the TV right back smack against the wall. The Samsung S95D also comes with a pedestal stand. It is also very solid. It's a little bit of a pain to assemble. You'll definitely need to look at the instructions, but once installed, it's also very solid. The S95D I have has just the slightest gentle lean back to the panel, whereas the LG G4 sits bolt upright now for what that's worth. That stand on the Samsung S95D also pulls double duty as a mounting location for Samsung's One Connect box. This is where you connect all your external devices like a game console, a Blu-ray player, streaming box, whatever, and then one cable runs up to the TV. You can mount the One Connect box to the back of the stand, or you can tuck it away in your media cabinet, your choice. Now, for many folks, the One Connect box is going to simplify installation, but for others, it might make things more complicated. If you don't have anything that you need to connect to this TV and just want a clean TV on the wall with no associated media stand or connected devices, then you have to get kind of clever about where you're gonna hide this box. I see folks cutting a large hole in their wall and putting an insert into that wall to house the box behind the TV, and though it is definitely a little extra work, it looks super clean. Shout out Express TV mounting. Both of these are exceptionally trim TVs, about the same thickness as an iPhone. Like, from an aesthetic standpoint, it's a draw for me. For out-of-box setup experience, also a draw. Some are gonna love the One Connect box, others will not. Some will like that LG does an included stand or mount based on the size of the TV, and others are not gonna like that. So it's a draw. As for user interface, I like to break this down into two parts. You've got the built-in system, or Smart TV OS, and then you have the remote you use to control it. I'll say right now that I prefer Samsung's remote. It's minimalist, it's got solar charging for its batteries, it's small, which is only a liability if you tend to lose things to your couch cushions. I just prefer it to LG's Wii-style Magic Motion remote, which also has a lot more buttons. But that is very much a personal preference. If you like having lots of buttons, the LG is a better way to go. As for the Smart TV OSs themselves, look, I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of either one of them. I'm gonna put an Apple TV on either one of these TVs. But I will say, in terms of how you use and interact with these systems, it's a draw for me. LG has made it much easier to get picture mode set up and applied across various inputs and apps, which I appreciate. I've also not had any major issues using the Samsung system. I just prefer the functionality and feature reliability for apps, especially on the Apple TV. So with preference to the Samsung remote, that's a slight tip to the S95D's favor, but because it is so highly subjective, I'm once again calling this section a draw. In terms of format support, it's a win for LG's G4. The G4 supports both Dolby Vision HDR and DTS audio pass-through for its HDMI eARC port. I'll comment some on whether not having Dolby Vision is a real loss when it comes to watching content on the Samsung S95D in a moment. But some folks want Dolby Vision and/or DTS support, and for those, the LG is the clear choice. As for gaming feature support, again, just features only. These TVs are pretty evenly matched. Both support 4K up to 144 Hz with VRR, and while the Samsung lacks G-Sync certification from NVIDIA, it works just fine with G-Sync and FreeSync, just like the LG G4 does. Both have comprehensive gaming dashboards that offer more features than you're likely to use, but thanks to Dolby Vision and DTS support, the LG G4 takes the dub here. The only difference in input and output capabilities from a technical spec standpoint is that the LG G4 supports full 48 gigabits per second bandwidth on its HDMI 2.1 ports, while the Samsung is limited to 40 gigabits per second of bandwidth. In theory, that would make the LG more capable, but in reality, I'm unaware of any source right now that will ever require more than 40 gigabits per second of bandwidth. So I would not personally allow that factor to color my decision. In terms of sound quality from the TV's built-in speaker system, this was also very close to being a draw for me. However, after spending some time scrutinizing at a very deep level, the sound quality of each TV on its own, not coordinated with a soundbar, I've got to give the nod to the LG G4 by a very slim margin. I think if you're going to integrate an LG soundbar with the G4 or a Samsung soundbar with the S95D, then I'd probably swing favor to the Samsung S95D in that kind of a case, just because I prefer their high-end Dolby Atmos soundbar systems on the whole. But for built-in TV audio, the LG G4 wins for me, which frankly comes as a surprise because looking at the back of the S95D and seeing all these bass transducers, you'd think the S95D would have a much bigger sound with better low-end response. But at least in this space here, that didn't really turn out to be the case. Again, it's super close, but I preferred the LG by a small margin. Now, if you've skipped ahead to this section, then you're likely an enthusiast concerned about out-of-box picture accuracy from a measurements perspective. Here, the LG G4 takes the win by a small margin. Both of these TVs put up impressively accurate measurements when it comes to grayscale and color when in the filmmaker mode picture preset. But the G4's out-of-box performance is so stinking accurate, I've got to give the nod to LG in this case. The The Samsung, though, might be more appealing to more viewers. The S95D's grayscale and white balance tends to be a little cooler on the color temperature side, which lends a little extra vibrancy to the picture. It's not as accurate, but damn close and very pretty to look at. Accuracy is just one measurement though. We also have to talk about color brightness, color volume, and color gamut. And in these areas, the Samsung S95D excels thanks to its QD-OLED panel technology. It can make some far out colors that the LG G4 just can't. And while there isn't a ton of content to take advantage of that kind of color performance right now, we will be seeing more content that can in the years to come. Also, from a color brightness and color volume perspective, the S95D pulls just slightly ahead, again, thanks to the QD-OLED panel type. So, slight advantage to the S95D here. However, measurements never tell the whole story. And in the case of comparing these two TVs, those measurements mean even less than normal. When it comes to overall luminance or brightness, the Samsung S95D measures brighter, at least for a time. Then its dimming system comes to the rescue because the panel starts getting super hot. But from a perceptual brightness perspective, when watching real content, the LG G4 appears to be a brighter TV. It can sustain its brightness for a longer time, and LG's processing does a great job managing average picture level brightness and putting brightness behind HDR highlights when it matters most. This is not something that you can measure because of LG's AI-powered processing. It's something that you can see when comparing the two TVs, though. Now, is that extra brightness a real advantage for most folks? I'm skeptical that it would be. In moderately bright to dim or full-on dark rooms, both TVs are more than sufficiently bright. I mean, they are the brightest OLED TVs we've ever seen. But that extra brightness horsepower only pays off when you're watching in a really bright room. And that is where we get to the complicating matter of how these TVs handle bright, sun-soaked room situations. The LG G4 has an anti-glare and anti-reflection treatment that is very effective. It can help content remain visible when you have bright windows or bright lamps or lights in the room. But in the end, it has a glossy screen, and its WRGB panel with MLA technology allows blacks to look jet black no matter the lighting conditions in the room. The Samsung S95D, on the other hand, has this otherworldly anti-glare and anti-reflection technology that works by diffusing the light across a wide area of the screen. So instead of seeing a focused, brighter light source, you see a very soft, diffused glow across the screen, which I argue is less invasive to the eyes, but it's an effect that others do not prefer. Also, in bright rooms, QD-OLED panels have slightly elevated black levels. Now, this is not something that bothers me most of the time when I'm watching, but it's a deal breaker for some folks. So add to that not perfectly inky black in a bright room issue, this light diffusion thing, and what you trade off for a generally more viewable picture in a bright room is some of the deep inky blacks for which OLED TVs are revered. Now, from a bright room viewability perspective, the S95D, I think, is gonna look better to the average viewer. But enthusiasts are making clear that they prefer the glossy LG screen. In the end, only you can decide what you prefer. So if you can, go have a look at both of these TVs in action at a brightly lit retail store and see what you think for yourself. Now, in moderately bright to dim or completely dark rooms, the TVs are actually pretty evenly matched, in my opinion. Again, that matte screen on the S95D is gonna bug some picture quality experts, if only because the idea bothers them. But everyone I've had come in to look at these TVs feels the S95D is extremely competitive with the G4 in terms of wow factor. There are a couple of picture quality areas though where the LG G4 pulls ahead for me, and I think will benefit most viewers. That would be in the cleanup of low quality streaming content and in general motion resolution. The LG G4 is just a cleaner looking TV with less banding and macro blocking than the S95D. It seems to have better detail without over sharpening the picture. Now, the G4 isn't perfect. It tends to show some gradient issues in the dark gray areas, but on the whole, it is a cleaner looking TV. And I prefer the LG G4's motion resolution as well. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is just yet, but the Samsung S95D has what appears to be a frame skipping thing that it does very occasionally with some of the streaming content I'm watching. And I don't see that on the G4. Now, before I finish my picture quality takeaway and tell you which TV I would buy if I was forced to choose between just these two TVs, I want to throw a rather important bone at the Samsung S95D here. While the LG G4 is technically more accurate and cleaner in many ways, the S95D, I would argue, puts out a picture that I think folks will often prefer, if only because it makes more of the picture visible in some situations. Take this very challenging scene from the HDR Super channel. Shout out Jennifer Gala. What you can see here is that the S95D is showing more stars in this scene than the LG G4. I show this scene because it's indicative of what you will often see in darker content, where, much to the chagrin of most viewers, HDR processing in the name of accuracy often makes some of the image difficult to see. It's been my experience that the S95D shows subtleties in luminance a bit better than the LG G4. And I think that while perhaps not technically accurate, that's something folks are gonna like. The S95D's game mode is also a bit overbrightened. Again, not accurate, but for many gamers, it's a look that they're going to prefer. The LG G4, by contrast, has a game mode that is slightly darker than the other picture modes. It's still gorgeous, but for folks who like a lot of zest to how their game graphics look, the S95D could end up being preferred. So look, folks, which TV is right for you is going to come down to several factors. By now, I hope you've gotten a read on which one you might prefer, as I've listed out the behavioral differences between each one. Picking a TV is such a personal choice, and you should absolutely go with your gut here. Hopefully, I've helped you get in touch with your gut instinct on each of these TVs. Understand this, both TVs are exceptionally awesome. Samsung and LG both have every reason to be extremely proud of what they've made. And each TV serves varying needs of different kinds of customers. But y'all are always asking which TV I would buy for myself. And while I do not think that should sway your decision, it seems I can't get away with making a video like this and not making that call. So I'll go ahead and say that if I were forced to choose, I'd probably personally buy the LG G4 for most of my rooms. However, I would definitely buy the S95D if I was putting this in a room that was just flooded with light and I frequently watched during the day. To be honest though, if we factor in cost, it's actually the Samsung S90D that I might want to put against the G4, because the performance of that QD-OLED TV at its price versus the performance of the WRGB OLED G4 at its price, that might sway my decision in favor of the Samsung option. I guess we might have to look into that in a future video. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please do me a favor and click that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more tech review content like this. And hey, leave me a comment telling me and the whole community what you think, especially if you consider yourself less of an enthusiast and more of an average viewer. I want to hear your thoughts. I'll see you on the next one, and until then, here's 2 other videos I think you might like. Absolutely go with your, there it is. Hi, this is Caleb.